Good day, everybody. Zack here. Welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. Our guest today is the Ibex 450 from CFMOTO. Very basically, that is a 450cc parallel twin, makes about 45 horsepower, weighs about 425 pounds, costs $6,500 American dollars. If you're new to motorcycling, you might be thinking, CFMOTO, is that a type of motorcycle? It is, and just bear with me for a minute here. If you're familiar with motorcycles, you'd be thinking, okay, a small adventure bike. Looks like it's purposeful. Looks like it's ready to take on some, adventure. But then again, some of the bikes CFMOTO has built in the past have been pretty good, and some of them have been pretty bad. So where does this one fall? What's the state of the art in the small adventure world, and where does the Ibex 450 land? These are great questions, and I'm so ready to talk about it. Let's go. Alrighty, everybody, before we get going on this daily ride on the CFMOTO Ibex 450, quick reminder that this video is brought to you by RevZilla. RevZilla is an e-commerce platform, of course. We don't make money off these YouTube videos, really. The way that RevZilla makes money is by selling parts and accessories and apparel for motorcycles and people who love them. And a little bit of all that money spent on RevZilla goes into making original content like this. So if you like Daily Rider or the Shop Manual with Harry Henning, the High Side Low Side podcast, CTXP Adventures, etc., we hope you keep that in mind next time you need something for you or your bike. In the meantime, thanks for watching. All right, everybody. Here we have a 449cc parallel twin with a 270-degree crank pin offset. That means it sounds like a little miniature version of a Honda Africa Twin or a Yamaha Tenere 700. Something like that. You'll hear a little thump in the exhaust when we fire it up. It is practically the same engine that's in the CFMOTO 450 SS, which we tested here on Daily Rider previously, as well as the 450 NK and the 450 CLC, something like that, or Cruiser platform. Each one has a slightly different exhaust, different tune, etc., but basically the same power plant. As for the structure of the bike, it is a steel tube frame. It does have a removable subframe, which is kind of nice, I have to say. And some of the other componentry is nice too. You got J-Juan brakes, which are pretty legit these days. Only a single rotor up front, 320 mil. We'll talk about brakes when we use them. KYB upside down fork and a KYB shock, I believe, which is pretty good componentry for an entry-level bike such as this one. And other than that, it's a pretty basic structure that you would expect to find on an adventure bike. It is a 1821 wheel set, which is sort of, legit in the adventure world. It's got pretty good suspension travel. It has a fairly low seat height. I'll ask you to note this while we're here, that the seat is pretty scooped because it's a 450cc adventure bike. It is in the sort of entry-level displacement size and price point. So CFMOTO did its best to make the seat low and approachable. We'll talk more about that as we ride, of course. It feels visually pretty large. It's pretty wide at the front here. It has this tall kind of vertical rally screen like you see on the Yamaha Tenere 700 or KTMs or other BMWs that are kind of like very European rally style front fairing and sort of stacked rally style windscreen situation here with the dash mounted up nice and high. It's handsome. It has an engine in it that I've liked before. It has some pretty good components. It has everything it needs to impress me. Let's take it for a spin, right? That's what we're here to do. And we'll fire this sucker up, and it makes a really nice growl, I think. Fueling when cold is one small issue that we'll talk about more as we ride, of course. But there you have it, Ibex 450. It's got a nice growl. It's got a nice look to it. It's got a nice dash. Let's take it for a spin, huh? See how it goes on the actual daily ride. All right, now that we're rolling, we can finish our discussion of the specifications. This is a 449cc engine, makes 44 horsepower, I believe. It's something like 8,500 RPM, basically a red line, with a full 4.6 gallons of fuel in the tank. It weighed in on the Daily Rider scales at 426 pounds. And the seat height is 32.3 inches, which means at 6'2" I can completely flat foot both sides. Very, very approachable seat height, undoubtedly. So yeah, the basic rundown of specs is that it is light for an adventure bike, but not as much lighter as it is less powerful and cheaper. That's the bottom line. That $6,500 price tag is pretty low, and the sort of basic engine size and horsepower specs are what you'd expect from a bike with a 450cc engine. And the weight is fairly high. It is fairly feature laden, as I said, and as we'll talk about, but that's certainly going to be a point of contention throughout the discussion about this bike, no doubt. So as for what it feels like to sit on, the seat height is noticeably low, as I said. Granted, I'm on the taller side, above 6 feet tall, but it does feel like a very scooped seat. The foot pegs are fairly high, not insanely high, but high enough that the bike has some ground clearance, right? Because it's sort of a adventure off-roady kind of thing. And so the legroom is a little tight for someone my size. But aside from that, I don't have a lot of complaints. It's quite a nice place to sit. It's upright and neutral, as you'd expect from an adventure bike. Nice reach to the bar. The bar feels kind of wide and commanding. It's a good balance, I think, of accommodating and appropriate considering what the bike is supposed to do. Right, out onto the freeway, already in 6th gear, which I was at about 45 miles an hour, I think. And by the time you're going here 60, 65 miles an hour, I'm not sure if it's loud for the microphone, but this is around the speed that I start getting some noise around the bottom of my helmet, because the tip of the windscreen is pretty far away. Like if I reach my hand out, I can't even touch it. It's out past my fingertips. And that, in my opinion, leads to a higher dose of turbulent air by the time it goes over the lip and makes it to your helmet. It's a little bit bubblier, all that air. And so it's a nice pocket of air to sit in, actually. I find it pretty comfortable. My shoulders are kind of in the wind, but my whole torso is covered by wind protection. But it does make the helmet a little bit loud. Actually, we can spin this up here. Is that any better for you? I'm not sure. You may have caught the subtle dig that I already made at the gearing on this bike, and I do think it's geared a little bit too short. We'll experiment with that around town a little bit to give you some more context, but it just feels like it spins kind of high. I mean, we're going 65 miles an hour pulling 6,000 RPM. If you want to go 75, you're going to be pulling 7,000 RPM or something like that, and there's a 8,500 RPM red line basically. So you're really just like spinning the engine up a lot to carry this kind of speed, and there's probably a couple reasons that CFMOTO does that. One, it's a small engine, you want some roll-on power, so that when you open the throttle at high speed here, it actually accelerates a little bit, which it does, to be fair. And also, the engine's pretty smooth, I gotta say. There's like very, very little vibration in the handlebar, a little bit in the foot pegs, but really nothing that I would be especially concerned about as an owner, which is impressive because a lot of bikes in this category, for lack of a more elegant term, they tend to be pretty buzzy and kind of annoying sometimes. This is a nice place to sit. There are only a couple exceptions. One is the gearing I mentioned. I think gearing it up would just make the bike feel so much more relaxed. I think fuel mileage would get better. I think it's a win-win-win-win-win. And also the seat is not great. I think the seat has sacrificed some comfort for making it low and approachable and making the number good. And that's great. I do want people to look at the seat height and think, I can do that, because you probably can. But I gotta say, at 6 feet tall, a little over for me, I would absolutely invest in the rally seat, which I have not tried, but I would spend the, whatever it is, couple $100 on it, because more padding would be much better for me, I think, more comfortable, and it would make the riding position just a little bit more appropriate. On that topic, one thing I experimented with was loosening these bolts here and rolling the bar forward a little bit, which raises the bar up and pushes it away from me just a little bit. And I liked that a lot. So that would be my combination of things, is I would get the taller seat and I would roll the bars up and forward a little bit, and I think it would fit me a lot better. And I don't think I would have a lot of complaints about the wind protection. It's a little bit loud in the helmet, but it's not that bad, and in general pretty comfortable. As for fuel mileage and range, you know, with little engines like this, it does depend a lot on how you ride them. My Common Tread colleague Dustin rode this bike across Southern California into a headwind, and he got pretty abysmal gas mileage, like low 40s or high 30s or something like that. I rode it around and got high 40s, One thing I will note is that the dash average that it calculates, right now it's showing 58.8, and the tank that I rode showed 61 point something, and it actually calculated to 46. So the dash was wildly optimistic, which is just something to note. I mean, if you buy the bike, you'll learn your way around it anyway. You won't need my advice. More to the point, the overall range for the Ibex 450 is pretty good, because 4.6 gallon tank. And it's, I don't think, outside the realm of possibility to get 50-55 miles per gallon, maybe even a lot more than that if you're riding on, you know, sort of slow 2-lane roads, that kind of thing. And so you'll have range well over 200 miles, which is great. For me, an adventure bike, 200 miles is the kind of the basement for what's acceptable, and Ibex 450 should be able to clear that no problem. Well, since we're stuck in traffic, I'm going to roll this down, and we're going to have one last discussion, which is about mirrors. The mirrors on this bike, and I know some of you don't love mirror discussions, the mirrors on this bike are flippin' fabulous. They're so good. They're smooth at any speed. They adjust nicely. They're in the right place. They're a good shape. They're everything you want. And they have a sort of like nifty aftermarket style feature where you can fold them in. So if you go down a trail, they don't have to knock into the shrubbery and bushes and stuff. And then you get back to the street and you can do this and just pop it back into place. Why don't high-end BMWs and KTMs and Hondas and whatever have that? It's flippin' fabulous. I love it. Woof. Man, that like 15 minutes on the freeway, I'm already sick of the seat. Too thin, man. It's a little better if you scoot back, but there just is not enough padding. All right, dipping into the neighborhood here for the old round town challenge. See if we can get some footless stops. I gotta say, the Ibex 450 kind of feels a little bit lighter than the scale said. It feels pretty balanced and poised at low speed. Oh yeah, that was a nice footless stop. All right, respect. I like that. I do have a couple of complaints about the Ibex around town. One is the clutch. I mean, good footless stop. The clutch feels a little odd to me, and the only way I can really it seems like it has a large engagement zone. Some bikes have a real short engagement zone, like MT-09. Really, like, you got to get used to the really fine kind of details of how you pull the clutch. This one seems like it has a very broad area in which the clutch plates slip and don't quite engage, and I find it a little bit disorienting. Something you could absolutely get used to, but I found it a little bit strange at first. It is very light and easy to use, that's for sure. So that's not really a complaint so much as it is a note, I suppose. One complaint I definitely have is on-off fueling. Like, the initial pickup is very abrupt, and you know, this is something that a lot of bikes struggle with. So the Ibex 450 is not alone, but I do think it's particularly bad on this bike. You know, if you're neutral throttle sort of and off and on, it's so herky-jerky. And with a bike like this that doesn't have a lot of horsepower, you're not doing that sort of really fine throttle work very often, to be honest, when you're out on the open road, because the throttle's probably going to be, whoops, there's a good photo stop. The throttle's probably not going to be closed and then open and then closed and then open in really fine margins very often. You're probably going to be on the throttle or off the throttle. So practically on the open road, didn't find much wrong with it, but around town, it's a bother, I would say. But in general, it wears its weight well. It doesn't feel, I don't think, as tall and heavy as it looks, which is sort of, I guess, a backhanded compliment in some ways. Right, away we go. I guess this is where I will point out the gearing here, which you'll notice I'm leaving this stoplight in second gear because I find it totally reasonable to leave stoplights in second gear. And I know that it's an off-road bike, and some of you will be thinking, yeah, first gear's low because, you know, when you're traversing that creek bed and you want, you know, the power to be on top. Yeah, I get it, but I think it's too extreme. Having ridden the bike off-road in some environments that I feel like are appropriate for the bike, I just don't think that I can sign on with the choices for final drive gearing. Around town, on the highway, and everywhere in between, I think it needs a larger countershaft sprocket and maybe even an additional 1 or 2 teeth smaller in the rear. That'll make you happier, I promise. I'm going to use first gear for this footless stop, though. Pretty good one, pretty good one. So yeah, overall, the herky-jerky fueling is a bummer, but in general, it's a pretty polite and consistent and pleasant machine to ride around town. I've been liking it. Also makes a great noise, don't you think? All right, on to Lover's Lane. And an interesting note about passenger accommodations on the Ibex 450, which is that the passenger seat is actually quite comfortable. And I think that's a pretty obvious reason why, right? The rider seat has been made low so that it is low and approachable, and it has given up padding and therefore comfort. The passenger seat, who cares about how high it is, because it's not their job to touch the ground. And if I just scoot back, there's no cruise control, so I don't have to do any passenger seat riding. But if I scoot back onto the seat, it is so plush, and by comparison, it's really nice. And the legroom is also kind of comparable, since the legroom's a little tight on the front. So I think passengers will actually be pretty happy back there, for what it's worth. I hope that there are some happy platonic or romantic couples that take a road trip or three on this bike. And if you're planning to sit on the back, I got good news for you. It's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Okie doke, here we go into the Twisty Road section, one of my favorites. And gotta say, pretty pleasantly surprised by the Ibex 450. Fun, works well, like the engine, I like the chassis, I like the tires even. They're from the CST, or a brand that is not, I would say, a blue ribbon tire brand as we've all come to recognize, but they work great. Same brand that was on the 450 SS Sport Bike, I mean road tire, same brand of tire, not the same type of tire obviously. And those tires worked well, and these tires worked well. I liked them in the dirt, I liked them on the pavement. I don't know how long they last, but they seem to be pretty good. They're basically knockoffs of Pirelli STR or Trail Scorpion STR, whatever they are. I will say the suspension is a little stiff, I think. I kind of like that. I'm a stiff suspension kind of dude myself, and I'm all on the heavy side, obviously. So I think if you're, 5'6" and 135 pounds or something like that, the bike might feel a little rigid to you. It is adjustable to some extent, which is good. But here's the thing I really like about it. I think that if you're a mild rider and you don't weigh very much, it might feel a little bit stiff. And sure, that is true. But if you are an aggressive rider or a little bit heavier rider, then the bike's going to feel a lot more planted and sort of capable and ready and willing to hit stuff. When I rode this thing off-road, I blasted over water bars, I jumped it, I slammed it through little creek beds and stuff, and it never bottomed out, it never acted kind of squishy and overwhelmed. And I just feel like that's the right attitude for a bike like this to have. It should be a little bit aggressive. If you want something really soggy and soft and supple, then there are other bikes that do that. And the Ibex 450 seemed like it was up for a little bit of a scrap, which I really like. And that's partly a personal preference, but partly I believe in the mantra that it represents, which is that it wants to be a little true adventure bike, and it's not supposed to be ultimately comfortable and squishy and soft in every single situation. So yeah, fun bike on a mountain road, whether that mountain road is smooth pavement or bumpy dirt or whatever. I think it handles itself quite nicely. All right, we can do a little acceleration test here. Wrap. Oh. I don't think I'd ever revved the bike quite that high. I said 8,500 RPM was almost redline, but that is not true. Let's find out what redline is. Yeah, redline's more like 9,500. Good for you, little guy. And here we are in 6th gear, right? Sorry to go back to gearing, but like I'm going almost 5,000 RPM in 6th gear at 50 miles an hour. Okay, let's talk about brakes. Here we go. Jumping on the brakes. Yeah, okay, I got ABS to engage. But by the time I got ABS to engage, I will say I was really hossing on the lever. I know it's a relatively low horsepower bike, 45 horsepower, whatever, 44 horsepower, but it weighs 425 pounds. And I think a 420 something pound bike deserves 2 rotors up front. And I know that maybe that's greedy, but at the very least, if you had one of these things, I would experiment with some more aggressive pads in the front. I think it would be fine. ABS seems to work pretty well, paved or dirt, and I think a little bit sharper bite would be better for the brakes. This part of the daily rider route brings up an interesting question, which is, do you buy this bike just for the engine? Tricky one. Really tricky one, because maybe. It's a really great engine. I really like it. That fueling gremlin is obnoxious, but it's good. It's smooth. It's fun. It makes a nice noise. It's got a good amount of power. I think it's good. I don't think ultimately it really delivers a lot more than some other small parallel twin engines like the Aprilia 457 engine, or the Kawasaki Ninja 500 Z500 engine, except that this engine is in a adventure bike, and that is meaningful. So if you want access to this type of power and size and dynamic, then this is kind of the one you need to get. And that Kawasaki engine's good, but it's not, doesn't sound as cool, I don't think. Plus you can't get it in an ADV bike, so All right, do we have time to talk about the dash here? Let's talk about it real quick if we can. Nice little layout, big analog tachometer here, gear precision here, nice and big. Everything's very intuitive. Trip meters down here, fuel gauge, range, time, battery voltage, which I never need, but it's there if I want it. If I tap enter here on the keypad, I go down into here. I can go to my phone, go in and play some music if I want to. Turn the volume up, turn the volume down, go into settings. It's all pretty basic, but classy. Traction control and rear wheel ABS. We'll get to that a little bit later. It's a nice dash though. If you're hard of seeing, some of these numbers might be a little small for you, but I don't have a lot of complaints. I think it's handsome. Not unlike the Ibex itself, I suppose. All right, coming to the end of the ride here, and there are a couple things I would like to address. One is that there are people who complain about this bike being made in China. How could you buy a Chinese product? How could you support the Communist Party? Stuff like that. If you don't want to buy the bike because it's made in China, that's fine. I'm not going to have that discussion. It's not an endorsement of the government of the country. It's only a review of the machine and whether or not it works. And hopefully you can take that at face value. The other thing I want to address, which is sort of adjacent in some ways, is I don't want you to get confused and think that all of the features that it has are the reason that I'm enjoying the bike for some reason. It drives me absolutely crazy when either companies or people say, oh, well, the bike has XYZ feature and that makes it good. Like this bike has really great mirrors, for example. It has tubeless spoke wheels. It has a TFT dash. These are things that the bike has that, yeah, I appreciate and I like, but that doesn't make it good. An adjustable windscreen doesn't make a bike good. What makes it good is it being cohesive and sort of adding value to your motorcycling life as a holistic piece of equipment. And that's something that I want you to keep in mind here. Don't think that the features make the bike. It has a good character and a good soul, and it has a charisma and a willingness and a playful attitude that I find really endearing, despite some of the flaws that it has, and completely regardless of the nifty features. So next up, the Ibex's Playground, the off-road shortcut, whoa, which is quite wet. Whoop, I stalled it. Quite wet. I didn't really bring my wet weather gear. But I guess we'll give it a go, First we'll start it back up. Then we'll talk about, you could do this on the fly. I should have showed you this on the fly. Hold this down, this button, and then up here you'll get a little off-road ABS notification on the dash, and it'll tell you that the rear wheel ABS is off. That's not something that I particularly need right now, but we'll leave it off for now, I suppose. If you want to shut off TC, I do believe you have to enter the menu and you have to go in here to TC, and then you have to go off, and then come back out to the dash, and you'll see this little notification on the dash that says traction control is off. And with that, I would say we are ready to tackle this off-road situation. Should we go left or should we go right? Left is the safe way. All right, let's go to the right. That's what I thought you were going to say. Whoa, slippery in the mud. Very slippery. Oh boy. Did you get in over your head here, Zach? Okay, okay, be cool. Everybody be cool. Nice. Yeah, we're adventuring. Look at us go. All right, let's pick our way through here. Slip the clutch a little bit. Spin the tire. Wrap. What a delightful way to skip between garbage and mud piles and whatnot. It is super, super fun. And it's awesome that the electronics are adjustable just enough for you to be able to do stuff like that. You may have noticed I was in second gear the whole time. That's kind of as slow as I feel like you're going to want to ride this bike. And you can disagree with me and think that you want that tractor gear. That's totally fine. But yeah, super willing, fun off-road companion, especially if you're doing sort of like open trails or fire roads, stuff like that. I think it handles bumps really well. I think it handles jumps really well. I think it's ready for crash cages and some camping gear on the back. I really do. But is it ready for a wheelie? Well, you know, I actually don't know. I haven't tried this yet. So let's see how it goes. I'm not really sure. I'm gonna try second gear because I've been telling you how low it is. A little wheelie. A little bitty wheelie. I got some better ones off-road when you got a little lump to go over or something like that. Not gonna be a complete wheelie monster, if we're being honest. It is a pretty heavy bike for one that has 44 horsepower. But that's okay, you know? I think accepting some of the built-in limitations of a bike like this is part of the charm. And I'd encourage you to see it that way too. Alrighty, we're almost there. Let's do one more sprint to the finish on the old Ibex, shall we? Wrap. So the question of can you back it in has hopefully been answered by now, because you know, the old shut-offable ABS. But yeah, definitely be very bad for your tires, but good for your soul backing it in. Let's give it one more try here, shall we? Turn it into the office. Well, there we go. There's a bigger wheelie. Maybe I just needed first gear. Okay, and quick note, if you want to shut off, or sorry, turn back on rear wheel ABS, you just tap this button here, bip, and there you go. Close the throttle, tap the button, and you're good to go. Time for a U-turn challenge, huh? Important facet of adventure bikedom, in my opinion. So we're gonna line up here. We're only gonna give ourselves 2 parking spaces. Hopefully you can do it here. Little Ibex, full lock left, feet up. Oh yeah, I think it's got it. Yeah, just about 2 parking spaces, I'd say. 1.9, maybe. It's a complex little machine to unpack, and I say that in a good way. You know, it's got some stuff to offer, and I don't know, it surprised me in some ways. And it sounds good. Am I putting too much weight on that? Maybe you don't agree, so throw away my opinion, but man. It's like it sounds cool. It sounds like you know, a little pit bull on the end of the leash, like, let me at those trails. I want to go jump stuff. Cool bike. That's my opinion. Okay, that's what I've got to say about it. Let's see what you've got to say about it, huh? So yeah, let's jump into some Instagram questions from you all. First one up here is Black Suede Shoes, who says, does the small twin character suit the bike well enough off-road, or do you find yourself longing for a torquey single? Does its on-road performance make up the difference, if any? This is a good question, right? Because, you know, for this amount of money and for this size of engine, you could say, like, just get a dual sport or, you know, other single cylinder KTM 390 Adventure X or a 390 Adventure R or a DRZ or a Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. I don't know. There's some stuff, right? One of the reasons I like this question is that it hints at the idea that an engine like this would be good on road, and I really do think it's good on road. I think that you're always going to have a little bit of a balance. You're always going to give up some things, sort of like smooth playful, high revving character, you're not going to get loads of torque like you do with a single. But I think it's a good balance. I do. It's possible to get that balance with a single too, I think. You just give up some things. I was really impressed at how well this bike handled on road, how well it goes down a twisty paved road, how well the tires work, the suspension works, the chassis works. I think it is a good adventure touring bike. That's what ADV is, right? Adventure touring. For the kind of dirt that we did here, just got a taste of, and the kind of dirt that I rode through on this bike, I just think it's really appropriate. If you want to pick your way through rock gardens and actually do some like enduro off-road riding, then yeah, maybe it's not for that. But I don't think it's supposed to be, so I'm not going to ding it for that. Good question. I like that. The next question is from Sanonik Kiva, maybe, who asks, is it fundamentally a good bike, or does it still need technology, price point, and flashy looks to be considerable choice in its class? Right. I touched on this earlier, but I'll just reiterate. If it did not have tubeless spoked wheels, if it did not have a removable subframe, if it did not have a TFT dash, if it didn't have adjustable windscreen, if it didn't have the best mirrors I've used in my life for some reason, if it didn't have adjustable clutch and brake lever, if it didn't have all that stuff, yeah, I still think it would be a good little bike. I'd be happier if it was, you know, $5,500 maybe for that price, or for, you know, removing all that stuff. But I would still think it was a good, fun, playful, willing motorcycle. And that is sort of the best compliment that you can give a bike in this class. And I appreciate you asking that question. The next question is from Holm Aaron, who asks, does the build quality stand up, or will bits start folding in half the moment it tips over on a gravel road? Good question. And I don't know, is the bottom line. And I'm going to use this opportunity to point out that my Common Tread colleague, Dustin, has this very motorcycle as a sort of long-term project. He's going to put some accessories on it. He's going to keep riding it. He's going to ride it off-road. He's going to ride it on-road. He's going to experiment with different seats and maybe different windscreens. And I don't know what he's going to do. But he's going to have it around for a while, and he's going to kind of have it be his bike. Hopefully what we're going to learn from that is this exact question. Like, does it hold up or not? I've seen some little hints that there might be, you know, bolts or fasteners that aren't the highest quality, stuff like that, but I can't speak to that in this moment because I haven't had any particularly bad experience with it. Hopefully Dustin will learn all those things. Link to Dustin's first article is in the description of this video. Please check it out and follow along with his adventures on the Ibex 450. We're going to learn a lot. Last question here is from Devilish Khan, who asks, is it a true rock-conquering Ibex or a donkey in an Ibex suit? I really like this question. Obviously, the root of this question is sort of like, can it do the things it looks like it can do? Which is, yeah, I think it's an actual little adventure bike. And that's part of the problem I've had with other bikes in this class historically, is they have their own charm. Like a Versys X300, for example. It's a pretty good little sport touring bike. You know, and yeah, you can take it off road and you can put knobby tires on it and stuff, but it never really felt like it had the attitude to me of being an actual off-road bike. It felt a little bit cobbled together. Royal Enfield Himalayan 411, charming bike, thump around off-road, have fun, but you're not taking it off jumps. That's not really a thing you're doing. And then if you go to dual sport, then that's a whole other ball of wax, right? You're not on a street bike anymore. If you're on a DRZ 400, if you're on a, I don't know, whatever else. I've just all felt like they were built to too much of a price point and just kind of, just a little bit lame. And I think this one stands out. It is not perfect. As I said, there's definitely some things about it that I don't like, but I do think it is ultimately a miniature version of a Yamaha Tenere 700, which is a great compliment to give a motorcycle, because the T7 is also imperfect, but is a terrific machine and really fun, has delivered a lot of people a lot of adventures. And I hope this one does the same. Thank you so much for all your questions. There were lots and lots of great ones. I really appreciate it. Keep asking questions when I make those posts. I have a lot of fun answering them. For now, let's jump inside, put the sucker on the Daily Rider leaderboard, see where it lands.
All right, everybody, here we are at the Daily Rider leaderboard. We're a few bikes into 2025 here. As a reminder, top of the board, you got your Yamaha MT-09, Kawasaki Ninja 7 Hybrid, and the Honda Dax 125 Mini Moto. A pretty wide variety of competition for the CFMOTO Ibex 450 here. Pretty good daily rider, right? Ultimately, it's not hugely expensive. It's not super tall. It's not super difficult to ride. It sounds cool. It works well. Are there some question marks about why the fueling is so bad, or sort of longevity, reliability, all those kind of things that people are wondering about when it comes to a motorcycle manufacturer that is less common than most? Sure, all that stuff is legit. What I can tell you is that it's a better daily rider than a Dax 125. Sorry, Daxo, it's still sitting right here. It's versatile, it works well, it's better than a Mini Moto, and it's better than that Ninja 7 Hybrid too. Ninja 7 Hybrid was flawed in some pretty major ways, as we talked about in that episode. And while it is a nifty bike, the CFMOTO Ibex 450 is good in a much more conventional way. So that leaves the CFMOTO Ibex 450 versus Yamaha MT-09 for the king of the board in 2025. Now, very obvious choice would be the MT-09 because this is a full-size motorcycle. It makes lots of horsepower. It's a tried and true brand. It's a tried and true model. It has established itself in the world of motorcycling as a good motorcycle, as a fun motorcycle, as an exhilarating motorcycle, delivering on so many of the things that motorcycles are supposed to. However, it also has some problems, as you might remember, the world's most annoying blinker switch, and doesn't make any horsepower in second gear. And so, when you start balancing that stuff, you're like, well, CFMOTO Ibex fueling stinks, on-off fueling that is. But once you're using the engine, it's good. It doesn't suffer from some of the things like the previous CFMOTO, where's that? CFMOTO 650 Adventura. Did not like that bike at all. And one of the reasons was the fueling was crummy, not just like on-off, but when you were on the throttle, it would like choke and stumble, and like it was just so unappealing, that motorcycle in general. I did not like it. The Ibex is a different ball of wax. It's better. And it is in the conversation with the MT-09 for best bike of 2025. Even if I took the MT-09 half the time, if these two were sitting next to each other in my garage, I would recommend the Ibex 450 more often. And I know there are question marks around this. I know that people are going to be mad that I'm seemingly endorsing geopolitical trends in a way that I should not be. But dang it, that's a pretty good motorcycle to ride to work on. It's fun, makes a nice noise, it's playful, it's willing, you can jump it, you can wheelie it, the electronics are sensible, and I do think in 2025 it is the best daily rider so far. There you have it. CFMOTO Ibex 450, top of the leaderboard in 2025 so far anyway. And just one last reminder to read the article linked in the description of this video, which is the first of an installment series that my buddy Dustin's going to do on the Ibex 450. We're going to learn about accessories, parts availability, travel, living with the bike. So please do check that out if and when you have the chance. In the meantime, hope you learned some, hope you had fun. See you next time.